doctors tell, please keep a positive frame of mind. When somebody is having some near and dear ones are becoming ill, or oneself is becoming ill, how to maintain a positive frame? Spirituality. Krishna promises that in the Bhagavad. If you have the spirituality, even if you come across the greatest of the misery, you will be unshaken. That is the strength that spirituality can give.
A very warm welcome, everyone. On the behalf of Wellness Club IIT Delhi, I, Shalu Verma, core team member, welcomes you all. Honorable Chief Guest, respected professors, and all the other attendees. Every year, during the week of International Day of Yoga, the Wellness Club organizes various workshops and talks to promote yogic wisdom among the campus residents. In continuation of this tradition, this year also, Wellness Club IIT Delhi, under the guidance of our Professor Rahul Garg, is organizing various adorning workshops for the 15 days by naming it International Yoga Day Fest 21. And today, we are having a talk on science, spirituality, and yoga. I am immensely delighted to take the opportunity to introduce our honorable speaker, Sri Chanchalapati Das ji. Chanchalapati Das has been working in the field of spiritual education since 1984 and social development since 2000. Although he had been passionate about science since his school days, he became introduced to Indian spirituality as an undergraduate student. He pursued the same even more vigorously while doing his MTech at Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore. He joined ISKCON in 1984 and he was a founding member of the Akshay Patra Foundation in the year 2000, which has become the largest school meal program feeding over 1.8 million underprivileged children in 10 states and in 10,770 government schools in the country. He was able to combine his values of compassion from his spiritual learning with his education in technology and apply the same to create a social development organization like the Akshay Patra Foundation. At present, he is holding various responsibilities such as Vice Chairman and Trustee, the Akshay Patra Foundation, Senior Vice President, ISKCON Bangalore, and President of Vrindavan, Chandrodaya Mandir, which is world's tallest Krishna temple. He continues to research, teach, and talk extensively on spirituality, social development, and the intersection of science, spirituality, and yoga. Now, I am highly elated to take an opportunity to introduce Chief Guest of the Day, the Deputy Director, Strategy and Planning, Dr. Ashok Kumar Ganguly. On the behalf of Wellness Club IIT Delhi, I thank him for providing his gracious presence to join us today to enhance our joy. Now, I would like to request him to introduce Honorable Speaker Sri Chanchalapati Das ji. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a great honor and privilege to introduce such a learned and endowed person. Sri Chanchalapati Dasa, who is Vice Chairman of the Akshay Patra and also Vice President of ISKCON, today will be speaking due to the International Yoga Day, which is on June 21st. These celebrations are being held, I believe. And he is going to talk to you on the relevance of science and spirituality and yoga. And with his deep knowledge, I think he will bring in a lot of thoughts which many people who are common people like us need to sometimes have to face difficulties, how to go through that. So the kind of philosophy that he has gone in depth will be shared, and I hope all of you will learn and try to mitigate the issues of life, everyday life, which all of us face. And with philosophy, one learns to overcome. Every day you will have positive, negative things, but with philosophy you can really manage your daily life. It's how well you do depends on each individual. So I think you have a great speaker today who has tremendous insight into this subject, and also he has been he studied at Indian Institute of Science. I also did my PhD from Indian Institute of Science way back. So I invite Sri Chanchalapati Dasa ji in this program organized by the Wellness Club, and I hope all of you take his ideas and think over them in your daily life. Thank you very much.
Namaste. Thank you very much for those kind words, Professor. And thanks to the students and the faculty who have organized this. This is truly an interesting subject to talk about science, spirituality, and yoga. In my studies in the last few decades, I've come across different definitions and understanding about yoga. Of course, yoga, what conjures in our minds are the physical exercises, which has its place and relevance for one's well-being and wellness. But yoga is much more profound than just the physical exercises. The particular definition of yoga that I would like to discuss today with all of you and elaborate goes this way. Yoga is the understanding, appreciating, and experiencing the science of one's relation with the Supreme. This is a definition that was articulated in this way by my spiritual mentor, Srila Prabhupada, in one of the verses while commenting on one of the verses in the Bhagavad Gita. Yoga is the science of one's relation with the Supreme. The first point here is yoga is a science in the sense that it is not a sentiment. It is not merely some kind of a belief. There is a rigor, there is an intellectual rigor around this understanding. There is a theoretical framework. There is a definite methodology. There is a certain outcome that is predicted ahead of time. And when you go through the process, you will be able to experience that which was predicted ahead of the process. It's just like saying that, you take a chemistry book and that describes a certain experiment. You mix chemical A and chemical B and heat it, you will get yellow gas, which is actually chemical C, and you can test its properties. You have that as a theoretical framework described in a textbook. And then I can go to the lab, get those chemicals and do that experiment, and I'll be able to see the outcome that was predicted in the textbook. That is why science is revered as that human enterprise which gives credible, dependable, believable knowledge in today's world. I would think that if you subject the corpus of knowledge about yoga that is available in the ancient Indian literatures, if you subject that to the careful and rigorous scrutiny, it would pass the test to be considered a science and not just merely a sentiment. In that sense, I mean to say that this is a science, not just some belief of a group of people. Historically, in our country, these philosophies, these concepts, these ideas were fiercely debated by different schools of thoughts, and it was subjected to a lot of scrutiny, and there would be debates and discourses on this, and a certain intellectual rigor to crystallize the understanding and to pass it on and expand on it generation after generation. So in other words, we see that there is an intellectual tradition, there is a philosophical quest and pursuit. It is not some kind of a sentimental stuff. The second thing I would like to take up in this definition, science of one's relation with the Supreme. One's relation. This brings us to an important question of who are we? We are talking about one's relation with the Supreme. Our relation, who are we? This is very interestingly developed in the second chapter of the Gita. Krishna says, Avinashitu tadvidhi ena sarvamidam tatam vinasham avyayasyasya nakaschit kartum arhasi. The Gita says, there is something that is spread all over this body. If I pull my hair, I can feel the pain. If I step on something very sharp, I can feel the pain. From head to toe, there is something that is spread. And that which is spread is the consciousness. Consciousness is that faculty by which we have awareness. Like we are all sitting in different situations and we are conscious that we are hearing a discussion that is going on in the context of the yoga day that we are going to have in a few days. And we are conscious that it is evening on a Friday. We are conscious that after some time at the end of this class, we have planned some activities. We are conscious of all this. We may be sitting in front of a table. We may be sitting on a chair. The table and the chair is not conscious. We are conscious entities. If there is an ant crawling on the floor, the ant is conscious, but its consciousness is limited to pursuit of food, safety, shelter, and a few things like that. So it is the consciousness which is pervading this body, and it is the presence of consciousness which makes us perform many cognitive functions through this body. I'm thinking, I'm using a language, and I'm speaking, and all of you are hearing me. And from the sound that I am making, which is transmitted over hundreds of kilometers, and you are hearing the sound vibration, and that is vibrating your eardrums, and that is converted into auditory signals in the brain, and it is making sense. And in my talk, if I make one grammatical error, immediately you will sense that, oh, he's speaking something, something is going wrong in his talk. So there is an understanding of grammar, English grammar, and all of this processing is happening. This is a function of consciousness. And this consciousness is present in this body. And we are all a unit of consciousness. We are an irreducible, indivisible unit of consciousness that is inhabiting in this mortal frame. Actually, Gita explains that we are that conscious entity, not really this physical mortal frame. The anatomy of organs and bones and blood and tissues. It's actually, we are the unit of consciousness, the spark of consciousness, which is abiding, which is residing in this mortal frame. The mortal frame is a foundation, is a basis. And the unit of consciousness is the one which is residing in the body. The simple analogy that is given is like there is a driver in a car. The car has all the mechanical systems, electrical systems, gear systems, but it is the driver who uses those systems and drives around. In the same way, in this physical body, we have all of these different systems, cardiovascular system, nervous system, and many others. And I am the driver who is using this mortal frame to experience various things in this world. So when we talk about ourselves, we are not talking at the physical level, because at the physical level, our consciousness is what we are. And the physical aspect of it is just a clothing. Just like I am wearing a shirt. And on tomorrow I can wear a different shirt, a red shirt. I may wear a blue shirt. But I am the same person who is wearing these different shirts, different garments. In the same way, there is a unit of consciousness which is actually animating this body. When that unit of consciousness departs from this mortal framework, I will not be able to sit in front of you. I will collapse. I will not be able to use language and speak. I may have the vocal cords. I may have my eyes. I may have all the different senses. But if the vital force is removed from this framework, then this will be declared as a corpse to be dealt with. If there is a small spark falling on my hand and I'll take care of it, I feel the pain. And if there is someone very close to me, dear to me, they will immediately say, "Hey, what happened? Are you okay?" But when the spark of consciousness has left this body will be taken to a crematorium and set on fire and turned into ashes in a few minutes. And no one will feel sorry about it. Because this is just a mortal frame, and the person who was residing inside has left. So the individuality, the individual that we are talking about, we are not this body, this mortal frame, but we are the conscious entity residing in this framework. And when we talk about the signs of one's relation with the Supreme, we are not talking about this mortal frame, because this mortal frame will be there today and it will be gone. In fact, Gita reveals another very interesting aspect and says that this conscious entity, the spark of consciousness, the spark of life, is indestructible. Avinashitu tadvidhi ena sarvamidam tatam. Sarvam tatam means spread all over the body. Avinashi means it is indestructible. This statement has a serious ramification. We are all conscious, may not be so particularly conscious, but we are all aware that one day we have to die. We will be gone. 100 years from now, none of us who are participating in this are likely to be present, likely to be around. We are aware of that. But what the Gita is saying is that consciousness, that spark of consciousness, which was animating this mortal frame, because of that presence of that spark of consciousness, I as an individual could accomplish many things. That individual, that spark of consciousness, that unit of consciousness survives the demise and destruction of this mortal frame. We will continue to live on. In other words, if I say I am 50 years old, it is referring to the body, the frame, mortal frame, which is 50 years old. It was born 50 years back. And when I say that I'll be gone, it is the end, the destruction and demise of this mortal frame. The consciousness which was inhabiting this body shall continue to exist. This is one of the fundamental concepts mentioned in the ancient Indian systems of philosophy. Now, there is another interesting concept that the Gita mentions. So this body has two aspects. One is the physical mortal aspect, and there is a spark of consciousness which is residing in this mortal framework. Another concept that the Gita talks about is, while we are situated in this body, we always live under a misconception that we are the body. While we are not the body, we are different and distinct from the body. It is just like the example I gave. There is a driver seated in a car and who is using the car. But somehow The driver has come under some kind of a delusion that he is thinking he is the car. If I ask the driver, who are you? He describes himself in terms of his car, identifying, or rather misidentifying himself with the car. If I ask him, how are you? Who are you? And he says, I am Toyota so-and-so. I said, no, I didn't ask you which car you are driving. I'm asking you, who are you? And then again he says, I'm 2018 model. My dear sir, I'm not asking about your car. Tell me, who are you? And again he comes back and says, I'm silver gray. He's describing the car in different ways. While I'm asking about him, we would say this is such an absurd understanding about himself, isn't it? Look at our situation. If you were to ask me, who am I? Who are you? I will say, I'm a man. I'm describing the gender of this body. I will say, I am 55 years old. I'm describing the model of this body, this car that I use. If you ask, who are you? I'll say, I'm Indian. I'm describing the place where this body was born. While I am not the body, I'm a resident and occupant inside the body. I am misidentifying myself to be the body. In fact, Sanskrit is such a wonderful language to describe these concepts. In the Gita, there is one verse, Dehinosmin yata dehe kaumaram yavvanam jara. There are two words used here, Deha and Dehinaha. Deha means the body, the mortal frame, the anatomy of organs and tissues and all of that. That is Deha. Dehinaha means an occupant in the body. Sanskrit is a wonderful language which lends itself to describe these concepts in a very interesting way. Unlike English, you have to use an occupant in a body. You don't have one word. Body and an occupant in a body. Deha and Dehinaha. Sharira and Sharirinaha. All these words are used in the Gita also in Sanskrit. So there is a Sharira or Deha or the mortal frame, and there is an occupant inside. And we are the occupant, but we live in a delusory state, thinking that I am the body. My self-definition is in terms of the body. I say I am Indian, I am man, I'm this many years old, I'm a doctor, I'm an engineer, I'm a lawyer. Depending on the training that this body and the mind and the intelligence has gone through, and according to some profession that we are involved in, we identify ourselves with these attributes, which are all attributes of the body. I am not the body, but I'm an occupant of the body. Just like the driver was identifying himself with the attributes of his car, Toyota, 2018 model, silver gray, and so on. His self-definition is not the definition or the attributes of the car. He is distinct and different from the car. This is one of the foundations of spirituality as articulated in Vedic, Indian ancient Vedic philosophies. The next is an understanding and an appreciation about the existence of a supreme, because we defined yoga as the science of one's relation with the supreme. It is a science. It is about one's relation, not one's relation, not referring to the body, but to the unit of consciousness, the spark of life, which is residing in the body, that is animating this body. It is the relation of that unit of consciousness with the supreme. Now, what is this supreme? Are we now treading into some other domain outside of science? No, not necessarily. There are many, many interesting concepts in science, which many very renowned scientists have acknowledged. I would like to give one example of the inventor of laser, Professor Charles Townes, who also received a Nobel Prize in physics in the 60s. Professor Charles Townes gives one argument. He says, just imagine there is a country which has got 1,000 people. And in that country, there are resources in that country which can provide good quality life for say 900 people. Whether you take healthcare, whether you take other natural resources, energy, housing, whatever, there is adequate resources for 900 people, but there are 1,000 people in that country. And the objective of the government is, in this country, is to ensure all the people in the country have access to adequate resources so that they can have good quality of life. Now, if you were to find a scientific solution for this problem, we have resources for 900 people and there are 1,000 people. How do we manage this? A very sound scientific solution will be, please get rid of 100 people. Reduce your population from 1,000 to 900, and then your problem is solved. Professor Charles Townes gives this argument and says, no one is going to accept this solution, even though it may be sound from a scientific point of view. Because new questions come up. How can we eliminate 100 people? On what basis will we pick these 100 people? Are we entitled to pick up and somehow get rid of 100 people? Can we do that? Now, these are hard questions. Now you have, within the domain of science, it's hard to answer all these questions. There's yet another example. There was a study done by a few theoretical physicists, and they studied that how from Big Bang up to the evolution of the universe over 13.8 billion years, and from the time of the Big Bang up to the evolution to now, and today we have Earth, we have planets, we have stars. And on Earth, life has evolved. And today there are evolved living entities. And there are human beings who are most evolved. And today we are sitting and discussing about all these things, including our own past. For all of this to happen, there is adequate study now established that says there are about 25 physical constants. For example, the charge of an electron, the mass of an electron, the ratio of the mass of electron and proton, Planck's constant, and many, many other, about 24 or 25 universal constants that we study in science. These physicists found that if any of these constants were even slightly altered by a millionth, that is 10 power minus 12, by a millionth, if these constants had a slightly different value, there are enough studies to show that the world would not have evolved the way it has evolved to have a stable star like the sun, to have a stable planet and many other features which allowed evolution of life to happen. And today we have thinking human beings discussing our past. This concept is known as the fine-tuning of the universe. How is it that the universe has come to be so fine-tuned, and because of which we have had the evolution and the development of the cosmos as we see it today? In fact, many scientists have talked about this, and the brilliant scientist who passed away recently, Stephen Hawking, said this aspect, fine-tuning of the universe, has serious spiritual repercussions. So this brings us to a certain understanding that the universe that we are now living in, the way the systematically how things work in this universe, makes us think that there is some superior force that is governing, that is managing and governing this universe that we are part of. So, in other words, there is an acknowledgement of a certain supreme. Now, yoga is the science of understanding our relation with the supreme. We must have an understanding of ourselves, about who we are. We should have an understanding of the supreme, the nature of the supreme. How do we understand the supreme? There should be a proper a philosophical, theoretical basis for this knowledge, and we must be able to verify that this is credible knowledge, not some kind of a sentimental stuff. And all of this constitutes yoga. Yoga is the science of understanding one's relation with the Supreme. What is the nature of the Supreme? Who is the Supreme? How do we understand? How do we receive this knowledge? And it is not just some theoretical understanding, but this yoga gives a theoretical framework, a methodology for understanding this, and makes a prediction of what that experience is going to be. That understanding of one's relation with the Supreme. What is that experience going to be? All of this constitutes yoga. And if you see from this analysis, it definitely calls for our serious introspection, a serious understanding of these things. Now, the last aspect of the talk that I'm supposed to cover is its relevance for modern life. What is the benefit and how is it relevant for modern life? Whether it is modern life or any life, whether it is life in India, life in America, life of a poor man, life of a rich man, life of a powerful man, or life of a common man, it does not matter. Everyone's life we all go through certain challenges in life. No one can deny the most powerful people on earth, the most famous people on earth, also go through challenges in their life. And sometimes they break down in the face of those challenges, unfortunately. So this knowledge, this understanding of yoga, this development of this understanding and coming to experience this will give us an altogether different perspective of life, an experience of life, and an experience of everything around us. It enriches us, it strengthens us internally. How does that happen? What does all this mean? Some of our ancient teachers have given an example to help us understand this. Imagine there is a man who is sleeping, and he is in deep sleep. And in his sleep, he is dreaming. And in his dream, there is a tiger that is chasing him. And he is running. He looks behind. The tiger is leaping towards him, just about 15 feet away. And he's looking all around and running as quickly, as fast as he can. And because of this nightmare that he is going through, he's sweating. Even though he's sleeping on the bed, he's sweating, you can make out. And he's full of anxiety. Now, how can we help this man who is going through this kind of a nightmarish experience? One way possible is that if I can somehow enter his dream, take a dream gun and enter his dream and shoot the tiger, and then he will be relieved. Oh, thank you very much. The tiger is dead. That's one way probably I can help him. There is another way I can help him. The other way is I wake him up and say, hey, get up. And the moment he wakes up, he will see the chasing tiger is gone, and he will be immensely relieved. This is what happens with the learning and the practice of the yoga methods, yogic methods. We are awakened to another domain, another level of reality. And when we are awakened to that level of reality, and when from that level we look down at another level that we are all going through with our family, with our profession, with our other relationships in this world, and the challenges that come about, we know how to deal with it, because we are now experiencing another level of reality. That experience of that higher level of reality is so enriching, it is so satisfying, that this level of reality and the happenings in this level of reality is not going to adversely affect us. We will be able to perform our functions dutifully as it is expected of us without becoming unnecessarily perturbed. This is the beautiful advantage of discovering this new reality of existence. And although I have explained this in terms of a few theoretical explanation, it just doesn't remain there. There is a process. Yoga also, there is a process associated with yoga, and a practice of that will genuinely lift us up from our present level of consciousness and understanding to a new level of understanding of that reality. And we will also learn the art of toggling from this level of reality to the mundane level of reality very, very effortlessly. This may all look like, how do we really understand? It's just like, remember when we all learned riding a bicycle. Somebody taught us how to ride a bicycle, and they told us you must balance, you must look in the front, you must keep your fingers ready on the brake in case something happens, and then you have to pedal. And then when first time we heard that, my God, so many instruction, will I ever be able to ride a bicycle? But then we practiced a little bit, and then After a while, we will be able to ride a bicycle. In fact, we can ride a bicycle thinking about so many other things in the universe, about the universe. So we become adept and competent by a certain amount of practice. In the same way, the yogic practices enables us to understand these things and experience the higher level of reality, and also learn to toggle between these two levels. And hence, this understanding is extremely important to a modern man, because in modern society, we are going through a lot of stressful life. We all hear that our parents and our grandparents and great-grandparents' life was a lot more peaceful. There was much more tranquility. Although we have made a lot of advances and we have mobile and internet and travel, air travel, and all of these are wonderful achievements of science and technology, our lives have also become very stressful. So this understanding of yoga, this understanding of spirituality in a scientific manner, not some sentimental belief system, but in a scientific manner, actually helps us to come to this realization. These are some of the things I wanted to share. And the last few minutes that we have, if there are any questions, I'll be happy to make an attempt to answer them. Oh, yes, there is one question here. Oh, quite a few questions. I'll try to run through them one by one as quickly as possible. This happens with most of the youth today, that they practice yoga, meditation, exercise for some days, but after that, all the motivation gets lost. Do not know why. Maybe laziness, procrastination, etc. So I just want to ask why most of the people do not continue, and how can we derive ourselves to stay motivated? Very good question. Yes, people take to yoga exercises and these kind of practices, but after some time they drop off. It requires a certain amount of perseverance. There was once I met one young fellow in some years ago, and then he came and told me that I'm doing this yoga and this practice, all this, and I'm not getting any result. I asked him, how long have you been doing? He said, last 9 months I'm doing. I asked him, what do you do? And I found that he was doing his dental surgery, BDS course. I asked him, how many years is your course? And he said, we have to study for about 5 years, and then there's another 1 year of internship, and then you will know everything. He said, no, we have to do another master's course, which will take another 3 years. So then I asked him, how many teeth we have? And he said, about 32 teeth. So I asked him, if you want to understand 32 teeth and you're doing this many 8 years of study after so many years of schooling and college and all of those kind of things, just to understand the teeth in your mouth, you need so many years of rigorous study. If you want to understand the meaning and the purpose of the whole universe, and if you want to understand what is all this about, you think it will happen in 9 months? You have to give some time. You have to have some patience. So it requires, it requires an encouraging atmosphere. We have to put ourselves in an atmosphere, in an environment which is encouraging. If there are other people who are also seriously pursuing spiritual truth, if there are also people who want to, who are practicing this and who are a little bit maybe ahead of us in the practice, these things will help us and will give us an encouragement. I'm sorry. So it is said that we must be in the company of people who are seriously practicing this, and that will help us. Second thing that will help us is that there are literatures around this which nicely explain the scientific basis for it and why we should pursue this. We should keep reading that. Intellectually, it requires some stimulation. it requires an environmental stimulation. And there is a certain practice. And that when we practice that, we begin to experience certain interesting spiritual concepts that are explained in the book. So that intrinsic experience also motivates us. So we should be in a favorable environment. We should be reading this literature connected with this, and our own practice and experience will be motivating. If these few motivating factors are not there, our enthusiasm will die down. Why in the current time, in people's mind, science and spirituality are emerging as two different things? I would say they have not properly understood spirituality. Like I explained, and that young woman who read out my little short bio, you would have noticed that I was a great fan of science, and I must admit, even now I'm a fan of science. I keep myself reading some of the new developments that happen in science. And I've also been very seriously pursuing spirituality for over 3 decades. And I don't see dissonance between the two. I don't see disharmony between the two. I see that there is a certain amount of rigor in science. There is similar rigor of another kind in spirituality, especially Indian spirituality, about which I have more understanding. And I've been a serious student of. So I think it is because of a lack of understanding of true Indian spirituality that sometimes they think that this is not scientific, whereas science is really scientific. I would like to seriously contest that misunderstanding. What is the source of ethics in science? Does the roots come from religion? In fact, there are a lot of philosophers, there are a lot of theologians who say that from science, you really cannot derive ethics. It's very hard. Like, say, for instance, a small animal captures, a bird after a lot of search captures some food. And then I have, all of us would have witnessed this. And the bird, after a lot of labor, finds that food and is very happy nibbling at it. And one bigger bird, like an eagle, comes and swoops over and takes away that piece of food and flies away. And this little bird is shocked and it is left without food. We wouldn't allow that to happen in human society, right? We have laws governing, these kind of human rights and such things. Whereas if you study in nature, these things don't exist. It looks like there is one American philosopher who wrote an article on this called The Immoral Nature. Nature looks like there is no morality in nature. So it's very hard to explain. Whereas when we bring in the concepts of spirituality, not even religion, even when we bring in the concepts of spirituality, immediately the very, very palpable principles of ethics, which is so self-evident, can easily be explained. So you need spirituality to explain ethics adequately and comprehensively. Please explain why science validates yoga, but not spirituality. I would like to question this premise. I would say science validates spirituality too. And yoga is about spirituality. Spirituality is understanding who we are truly. We were discussing about that we are not this mortal frame. We are a spark of consciousness. And that spark of consciousness has a relation with the Supreme, which is governing the universe. And all of this is spirituality. And there is a scientific framework to understand this. And I think using those scientific methodologies, we can validate even spirituality. How spirituality can help us in making our lives better, we talked about it. We go through challenges in life, and spirituality and spiritual understanding can give us an insight and an understanding of another reality of existence, and that will strengthen us to face the challenges of life. How to control emotionally disturbed overthinking. Yes, there are practices in yoga by which there is something known as mantra yoga, which especially works on the mind. When the mind is overthinking, the thinking is a function of the mind. And if the mind is overthinking and is emotionally disturbed, then there are certain mantras which are chanted. And in fact, the word mantra in Sanskrit means man means mind, and tra means trayate, means to free the mind. So mantras help to free the mind. So if someone is afflicted by that kind of a situation where somebody is overthinking and emotionally getting disturbed, mantra meditation, mantra yoga is what is recommended for one to become free from that. And I think we are running out of time. And I would like to thank all the organizers. And I would like to particularly thank Professor Ashok Kumar Ganguliji. Happy to hear that you are an alumni of Indian Institute of Science. Nice to hear about that. And Professor Rahul Garg, President of Wellness Club, and students and other members who were participating in this. Thank you all for giving me an opportunity to share this information. Namaste.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for honoring us with your presence and giving wonderful insights on science, spirituality, and yoga. How science and spirituality both are the face of same coin, and persuasion of the process is yoga. On this occasion of International Yoga Festival, let us enrich our lives with spiritual knowledge and yoga practices. We thank Folk Youth and Empowerment Club and all the students of Wellness Club IIT Delhi who involved in the coordination, who helped us in organizing this event successfully and introducing this session to all of us. Before we sign off, we thank all the participants for taking out their time and becoming the part of this talk. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. We request everybody to please fill the feedback so that we can improve further.